Well, thank you for this opportunity to join you for this Iftar dinner and the invitation to share a few thoughts on matters that I felt were important, and that was my brief that was given to me, very broad brief. First of all, I'm sure that all of you would like me to thank Deakin University, our hosts for this evening, for their generous hospitality. It really is fantastic that you have been able to do this. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the Australian Intercultural Society for organising this evening's event. More importantly, I want to thank the Intercultural Society for developing this tradition over many years, enabling the wider Australian community to share the breaking of the fast during Ramadan. This has been, to me, a great initiative where over many years my wife and I have enjoyed the hospitality of joining in the breaking of the fast with many Muslim families in many different parts of Melbourne. AIS has really, truly contributed greatly to enabling Australians of many backgrounds to enhance their knowledge of the Muslim faith. Again tonight, AIS has shown great leadership in the area of intercultural and interfaith issues. These initiatives have the capacity to contribute greatly in developing and, importantly, maintaining a harmonious society in this state. And I use the word harmony deliberately, as it brings to my mind a sense of happiness, as one might get by listening to a piece of music that blends notes to yield a pleasant, comfortable feeling without any harsh notes that jars one's body. If I tried to substitute the word tolerance for harmony, I came up with a different feeling, one of acceptance, but not necessarily with joy or happiness. One can legislate for tolerance, but legislation for harmony is far more difficult, if not impossible. Nevertheless, tolerance can form a foundation stone to achieve harmony. And perhaps all of you could consider whether we are a harmonious multicultural society or one that could best be described as tolerant. I'll leave you to muse on that one for a moment. We are fortunate that Melbourne and Victoria is indeed a tolerant and, to my mind, a harmonious multicultural society, and that we live in a state that has a constitution that enshrines the right to freedom of religious expression. Our history over many, many years, if not centuries, is one of migrants entering this country. As I will discuss later, evidence suggests that even our indigenous population migrated to this continent 50 to 70 million years ago across from Africa. European migration after Cook's discovery of this great southern land set the scene for waves of arrivals, many as both as migrants and refugees. The gold rush brought adventurers from many countries, including a significant Chinese cohort. Post-war migration included refugees, predominantly who came from European countries, but was then followed by a greater mix of people after the White Australia policy was rescinded. More recently, people from diverse countries have found refuge here in Australia, Vietnam, Cambodia, the Middle East, and many parts of Africa and South America. This state and this city of Melbourne can truly be called cosmopolitan and multicultural, and provides an exciting diversity of people. Nevertheless, at various times in our history, tolerance has been tested when old animosities have prevailed in countries of origin. Animosities that prevailed in countries of origin have surfaced. Fortunately, these episodes are small, but yet worrying, and suggest that we need to work hard to ensure that our society is harmonious and not just tolerant. What are the issues that make it difficult for us from being a tolerant and harmonious multicultural society? Clearly, there are the differences in the physical characteristics that each of us inherits on the basis of our genetic status, a theme that I'll return to in a moment. There are language differences, and these impact significantly on the capacity of a migrant or refugee to achieve a basic understanding of their new country and to interact with those who already live in this country. In part, the capacity to learn a new language is dependent on the past education status of those people who are people. Clearly, if English is read and spoken and understood, a barrier to interaction is immediately removed. The need for assistance in English language education is critical in assisting this type of communication. Many existing members in our society have a poor understanding of the traumatic journey that many new arrivals to Australia have experienced. The trauma and sometimes torture experienced place a heavy emotional burden on the refugee and migrant. In this context, I'd like to acknowledge the wonderful work that's undertaken by Foundation House, who service the needs of people who have been exposed to torture and psychological trauma. Enhancing the education of our populace about these matters is very important in the pathway to tolerance and understanding. Regrettably, the incarceration of illegal immigrants will add immensely to the psychological stress to which they are exposed. It's not surprising, therefore, that reports are emerging on the flow-on consequences that can virtually render individuals unemployable and psychologically crippled, making them a burden on our society in their requirement for welfare services and also their success in achieving financial compensation for the psychological damage imposed through our legal system. It's also well recognised that differing religions can be a point of stress in a multicultural society. Throughout parts of the world, there are conflicts that continue between different ethnic groups, often closely tied to beliefs arising from their different faiths. In some instances, these conflicts have arisen between different branches of the same faith, such as the long conflict in Northern Ireland between the Catholic and Protestant dominations of the Christian religion, and in the Middle East between different branches of Islam, the Shiite and Sunni Muslims today. Taking an interfaith journey is sometimes something that should almost be compulsory for those who enter into discussion with people of differing faiths. A number in this audience here today come from different faiths. Sometimes we are members of different branches of the same faith. As far as my limited understanding has taken me, all of these faiths have a belief in a God, a belief that is based on evidence that, if it was presented to an atheist, would result in an unproven case. As a scientist, if I looked at the basic tenets of the Christian religion, it would be difficult for me to provide scientific proof to convince colleagues, particularly those with a scientific background, that Christianity should be the religion for them. For instance, I accept from scientific evidence before me that the evolutionary theory represents the most logical explanation of the origin of mankind. The extraordinary complex processes that are involved in the biology of life, to me, are a source of wonderment. The human body is an incredibly complex machine with beautifully crafted control systems. Compelling evidence has accumulated to indicate that this complex machine arose by progressive evolution from single-cell organisms. Let me digress for a moment to give you an example. The lining of our nasal passages and the bronchial tree of our lungs contains cells that have processes on their surface that exhibit continuous coordinated movements. These are called cilia. Cilia exhibit directional movement, moving particles such as dust and bacteria to a point where they can be coughed or sneezed out. Cilia are very like the oarsman whose blades pull in the same direction moving the boat forward. But for cilia, the boat consists of dust and particles and bacteria. Normal cilial function is also crucial to the survival of algae, single-cell organisms that use a cilia as a tail that beats and propels the algae. Cilial function is also important to mankind. If cilia don't function, our lungs and sinuses become infected and may require parts of our lungs to be removed. They are also important in determining where your organs are placed. In males with a genetically based failure of cilial function, have their heart either on the left or the right, or their appendix on the left or the right, so that cilial beating establishes your body pattern. Clearly, these observations indicate that during the development of the fetus, cilial movement is important in determining the placement of organs. Cilial movement is also crucial to successful reproduction. If there are defects in cilial function, sperm do not move in that particular individual, since the tail of the sperm is actually identical to the structure of a cilium. So we do see men who actually have infertility, their heart's either on the left or the right-hand side, and they belong to a syndrome called the immotile cilious syndrome. So these are clearly a wonderful example of biological engineering. If you looked at this structure, would you wonder who designed it? Who was the engineer? I'm not going to pursue that. That's something for you to think about. Recent studies have shown the conservation of genes encoding the proteins in a single cilial organism, such as algae, and those encoding the cilia of humans, show 70% identity in terms of the proteins. That's an extraordinary degree of evolutionary conservation from a single-cell organism to us as a multicellular creature. And it provides a strong example of evolutionary conservation. I use this example to demonstrate the incredibly complex yet beautiful conservation of a scientific process that underlies this phenomenon of cell movement or propulsion. The purpose of my taking this time to describe this process is to ask the real question: who was and is the engineer? Could all of this have arisen by accident? By acts of chance moulded by the environment in which that organism existed at the time, a theory proposed by Dawkins? Alternatively, is this evidence for a higher being, an entity, a creator, or God behind this all? I can't prove either theory. Those of us of the Christian faith would believe in a God creator who was the engineer. For me, this engineer did not complete the job in a week, as expressed in the book of Genesis, but more over an evolutionary time span. To accept belief, this belief is an act of faith, bringing that word faith as defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a firm belief, especially without logical proof. All of our religions or faiths fall into this definition. Faith's also defined as complete trust or confidence. In essence, all of our religions require us to have faith, that is, complete trust and confidence in faiths that are defined as firm beliefs, especially without logical proof. Sorry for that little bit of convoluted English. In fact, all of us who believe in any one of the religions represented here tonight have in fact been called to undertake a faith journey, to profess a belief in a religion based on writings and information that cannot make a proven case and that require an affirmation of faith or belief. What does this convoluted discussion of logic have to do with the purpose of today's theme? I would like to propose to you that all of us belong to faiths or religions that profess a belief in a God, although the pathways to reach that God may vary. Let us recognize that commonality and respect the beliefs of each other, removing any prejudice or intolerance, and recognizing that each faith is in fact a belief without logical proof. Organisations such as the Intercultural Society is one of the organisations through its efforts attempts to bring Muslims and those of other faiths to meeting places that enhance our understanding of each other and our religions. If those of us in society who have a religion could accept the logic that I have just discussed with you and agree to respect each other's beliefs and proceed to emphasise the commonality between our faiths, we would move forward in removing differences in religious beliefs from the list of factors that prevent us from achieving harmony. It would also enhance tolerance. And I hope this gives you some personal insights into this important topic and a framework upon which one could develop a set of actions. Let's all continue to work hard to take a tolerant, multicultural society that we have into one that is truly harmonious. Each of us can make a difference. Thank you.